HCAM ready?
You're on there.
We are on there, okay. Good evening and welcome to our November 18, 2021 regular meeting of the school committee. We have just returned from executive sessions, so we are a couple minutes behind. But I would invite everybody who is here who would like to join us in the pledge to please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so the first item we have on our agenda here is the public comment. Is there anybody here who would like to make a public comment? Okay, so you can come on up. You can come on. You can have a seat right at the end. Just introduce yourself for our minutes and for HCAM, and then you have 3 minutes to.
Thanks.
Go ahead and speak.
I haven't done this before. Okay.
Oh, welcome.
Thanks. I'm Jennifer DeTomaso Jacobson. My daughter, Kendra, is in 5th grade. She's not in 5th grade in the Hopkinton Public Schools. She's at the Carroll School in Waltham at our expense. And so I just want to put in my two cents
So
that
I'm just going to interrupt you just for 1 second, just because this is a particular student-directed concern. I'm going to direct you to bring it offline just because of privacy concerns and because we are not. But if you have a general related to what's under our purview.
Thank you. My general concern is I hope that there is as much money as humanly possible and then some in the budget for students with dyslexia, for teachers that are trained in multiple different ways of teaching students with dyslexia, like Orton Gillingham Wilson, and for creating a substantially separate classroom for students with language-based learning disabilities, because that's really what my daughter needs. But you're right, that's a privacy thing and a specific, but that's where I'm coming from. And that's why I'm here.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted
No,
to
I
make sure
understand.
that you had a higher policy, which you do.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
That's my 2 cents.
Excellent. Thank you very much for
Thanks.
coming. Appreciate it. Okay. Anybody else before we go into recognitions? Does anybody have recognitions? I do just want to recognize the high school production that happened last week. It was the first production back in person. It was very exciting, and I'm sure a lot of students attended as well, but as always, I'm impressed with the talent that we have at the high school. That brings us then into reports. So I'm going to go ahead. Jesse, if you want to start with yours.
Yes. Hi, I'm Jessie Ionelli. I'm a senior at Hopkins High School. And overall, everything at the high school is going pretty well. We're a little bit deeper into our mask trial, and nothing has really changed too much. It's basically the same, about 50-50 with kids wearing their masks or not. And there really haven't been any major problems, which has been great. As you mentioned, we had a very successful show weekend for our drama production all together now. And it was really great to be able to see everyone back on stage again after having to not be able to have performances for so long. On the sports side of things, our girls cross-country team is going to the state championship on Saturday, and our girls volleyball team will also be going to states on Saturday in Tewksbury at 4 o'clock if you would like to go watch them take on Westboro. It should be a good game. One exciting thing that happened this week was we finally had our new classrooms available for use, which caused a lot of excitement and joy for all of the students and staff as well. So that has been a source of excitement at the high school. And this week is also the week of our pep rally, so there's been lots of school spirit. We've had different spirit days each day of the week, like business and pajama day, and we've had a lot of students participating in those, which has been great to see. After pep rally tomorrow, we have our girls football game too, which will be exciting, and this is a really great fundraiser for the junior and senior classes, so if you'd like to come out and support that, that would be great too. Student Council specifically has been mainly focusing on planning our first ever outdoor pep rally, which has been proven to be a lot of work, but we're figuring out the timing and the schedule and decorations and everything, and we think it can really be a great event, so that's awesome. And we've also been running our biggest fundraiser, which is called Penny Wars. The idea is that each grade has a jar to put coins in. Pennies give you positive points, and any other coins give you negative values. So it gets really competitive, putting $20 bills in everybody's jars. And the idea is the maximum amount of points, negative points in other grades' jars, and the maximum amount of positive pennies in your own jar. So this is highly competitive and is always a great fundraiser, with Student Council getting half of the winnings and the winning grade obviously getting the other half. So that's been what's going on at the high school. If you have any questions, I would love to answer.
Thank you. And are you participating in the girls' football game?
Yes, I am.
Good luck.
Go Seniors.
And you guys train really hard.
Yeah, we have practices before school. We were on Wednesdays, and the juniors are on Thursdays every morning, or every week, 7 o'clock before school. So definitely been putting in the work. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Of course.
So that then brings us into the beginning of our budget presentation. So I will turn that, invite, I guess, Dr. Zaleski to come up first. If you're
Do you want me to put it on the screen?
Yes, that'd be great. Good for the people at home.
Takes some time sometimes.
Does it
Takes
take,
a minute.
take it?
There.
Oh, there we go.
Great.
Is that okay? All right. Oops. Can you hear me? Okay, all right, thank you for having me. Welcome, everybody. So I'm presenting tonight the FY23 Special Education Budget. And I want to just go through my executive summary, just to give folks an idea and an overview, and you know, of each line and where I'm at with the budget and my requests. And I'm happy to answer any questions following. So my preliminary budget is $13,805,089, and it does include the requested positions I'm asking for, and it does reflect a 14% increase from FY22 of $12,112,720. And this reflects an increase in salaries of $598 and total expenses of $1,094,024. When we look at the personnel summary, so as I stated, there's $598 in salaries, but this number includes positions that were added in FY22, so positions that I've already come before school committee and asked for, and new positions, the 281,914. I've also asked for ESY teacher and paraprofessional increase of $10,000. So when I examined FY22 to FY23 projected needs, and looking at our students who are qualifying and who may or may not need services in the summer, we want to be proactive, make sure we have funds in the budget to support that this coming summer. And then it does, well, like as I stated, it supports high-need students. And the new positions are budgeted to support students' needs across the whole district, K-12. And so I did the breakdown for you. When you look at the FY22 to 23 adjustments, it includes the following increase in positions. So last year, we asked for 2 ABA paras at Elmwood, and that was to support student move-ins, and 2 ABA paras at Hopkins. Now, one of those is grant funded, so I write several grants, and that was to support our social emotional programming of the Empower program. And then 1 ABA para at the middle school, which is also grant funded to support the Empower program at the middle school as well, to ensure we have enough staffing. So Empower is a Tier 3 support program for students with social emotional needs. And we were realizing that just the number of students that had needs, because we promote an inclusive opportunity for students, meaning we don't keep them in one room all day, they go out into the classrooms. So in order to do that effectively, we want to make sure we have paraprofessional support, and that was what that was for. And then we also asked for last year 1 SPED paraprofessional at the high school, and this was to support grade 8 to 9 transition needs. And Mr. Bishop and I analyzed that at the end of last year, and we put this in. There was a 0.8 TVI. So TVI stands for Teacher of Visually Impaired Reduction. The reason that's a reduction is we did have a student graduate, and we had a student remaining, 1 or 2 students remaining in the district. So what I did, you'll see later on in the budget, I had moved some funds around in contracted services. So right now I'm paying for a contracted service provider rather than the 0.8 staff provider. And so the new positions requested is, you're going to see the top 3 requests for this year relate to pre-K. So I am requesting another pre-K classroom due to enrollment. And if you have specific questions, Mr. Bowe, who's here, who's our Marathon Elementary principal, would maybe have some information, further information, to help you folks better understand that process as to why we're asking for the staffing. But Mr. Bowe and I worked very closely in looking at the needs, along with all the principals, by the way, when we developed this budget, as to what our needs are at the building level. And so we determined we need 1, in order to make this work, for another classroom, because of the numbers we're projecting coming in from early intervention. We need a teacher to support that, 3 ABA paraprofessionals, and a .2 speech. So by adding a .2 speech pathologist, that's going to level us to have 3 speech pathologists at that level. Right now, what we do is we have 2 and .8, and then we shift back and forth in the district if there's a need, if we get like a lot of enrollments and we have to do a lot of evaluations. So in order to level it for next year, we really do need that increase support, especially with the projected amount of pre-K EI students coming in. We're also asking for a nurse district-wide. So the medical needs, Ms. Bain looked at all the data with me and looked at the number of students that are medically compromised in the district and the volume of the need and the intensity of their need with varying medical complexities. And after analyzing that, we really determined that, in order to safely operate, we do need to have another nurse. And she works very closely with me to deploy the nursing staff across the district as to where the need lies. And we called it a district position because we want to have the flexibility to flex that person back and forth across the district. I'm also asking for an ABA paraprofessional at the high school. And so the reason for this additional ask is, as you may or may not be aware, we are working on 18 to 22 expansion project. And we've developed a business, which I'm really excited about with the kids, and they're super excited, young adults, actually, I shouldn't call them kids. And so our students, in order to effectively, engage in this business endeavor, what we're finding is, they have transition plans for their post-secondary goals and visions, and any student 14 and up has a transition plan. But these particular students, because they're on this business venture, they have dual responsibilities. Right now they're working on this business, but they're also working on their transition goals in their IEP. And so what's happening is we have our 18 to 22 coordinator who's running it with our existing paraprofessional support. But the business is it's a business, so we have to do a lot of things. We're looking at marketing, and we're looking at how are we going to sell our products, and we're trying to help the students learn about financial literacy in this process. So what we have decided we need until we grow this further is this paraprofessional support person who will help us with the business aspect with the students. So while some students are out and about in the community working at their jobs for their transition plan goals, this paraprofessional position might be back with students who are working on the business side, and they'll take turns doing that on, like I said, the marketing, financial literacy, analyzing the products that come in, making sure the products are distributed appropriately, doing the checks and balances. It's really fantastic, and the kids love it. They just do. They're doing such a great job. So all of that is why I'm asking for these things, and I just wrote a little summary about what I just spoke about in here, pertaining to the new positions that we are requesting. When you look at the expense summary, so the increase of $1,094,000 is significant, and it's really relating to transportation, but primarily tuition. Transportation, we had to add a 5% assessment fee of $38,000, so we do that when we're looking at transportation needs as we're making projections. But the tuitions are really the biggest number here in this budget. And really it's related to 5 students have moved in. So as you know, we're growing as a district. And 5 students have moved in requiring support, as well as we have 4 students currently in residential placements. We are also predicting based on current needs. Right now we have 25 students in out-of-district placements and anticipated student needs. And it's no easy task, because when a student moves in, particularly if they're in a placement, depending on the type of placement, we do have a responsibility to keep the student at that level of care. Of course, we also have an obligation as a district to call an IEP team meeting to determine if they still need that level of care, which we do. But we're very responsible in the sense of if a student's been placed there by another district and they've done their due diligence and that student has a need, we want to make sure we're safely educating the students. So that is the result of the increase. So what we've done, Ms. Rothermick and I spent some time looking at circuit breaker, so we're able to offset some of that with $350,000 in circuit breaker funding, but it does leave an operating impact of $1,050,564. So it's a pretty big impact, so I wanted you folks to be aware of what's happening with that. When we look at supplies, it's not that big of an impact, but I did want to talk about that too. Myself and we have an 18 to 22 committee for this business, and Ms. Halliday, who's on our CPAC, is also part of that committee. And we determined on this committee that Right now, we really want to have like $10,000 as a line item for supplies, because we are working on getting a credit card for the business to be able to quickly purchase something if we want to have all the products come in for sale, and not have to wait for the red tape of the purchase order process. So in order to do that, make sure we have the funding to pay the credit card bill when it comes in, we wanted to level the budget. So we've got $10,000 in there to cover that need. Right now, this year, how we're getting through it, if we have to use that credit card, will be, I have money in my 18 to 22 account, and I also have some grant funding as well. So we'll figure that out as we go. And we're hoping to grow and grow quickly, so we'll see. And so the products are up, by the way, on the Niche Hop Shop. So if you go to the Student Service website, and you go down where it says resources, 504 contacts and contact information, I put a little icon there that says Niche Hop, and you click on it, it says buy now, and you can purchase products for the holidays, so feel free, friends, families. This is a budget and marketing pitch. If you'd like to buy a product, please do so. The students, in partnership with some members of our committee, created these products, and we're really excited about it. So other expense changes reflect a shift from one line to another, and for example, you'll see the sped eval line, I shifted over to contracted services because it didn't make sense to have two lines, because quite frankly, when I have an evaluation that needs to take place, if it's a risk assessment or a psychological evaluation outside of the district, I pull it from contracted services anyway, so I merged those two lines together for this budget just to make it a little bit cleaner. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Could I ask you, just for the community's benefit, if you could review the preschool, the guidelines for establishing a preschool classroom, because I do think maybe not everyone in the community remembers that that is somewhat governed by law.
Absolutely. So Lauren DeBoe is expert in pre-K, so I will just say we work with early intervention and pre-K, and we're governed by those regulations. But Lauren knows the day-to-day ins and outs, so here you are.
So I'm happy to talk about preschool. So early intervention is the services for students birth to 3 years old when they have a disability. Once students turn 3, it is then the public school's responsibility to educate the children. We first go through an evaluation process because not everyone who has services with early intervention, or EI as we call it, qualifies for special educations through the school district. Sometimes it might be related service. They only need speech, they only need occupational therapy, or sometimes it's full programming. And that programming can be a moderate level program, meaning they attend half a day, or it might be a full day program where they are in school full day for preschool, half day with peers. So all of our students, even our intensive students, have half a day of inclusion opportunities with peers. What is unique about preschool is our preschool program is 49% students with disabilities. Like, the intent is to provide education for children with disabilities. So that is a high percentage of students with disabilities. In a typical trend, we average qualification of 40 to 60% of those evaluations qualifying. This year, we're trending to 90%. It has been significant. With the state, you have ratios and guidelines for class sizes. So if you have 6 to 7 children with disabilities in a class, you can have 15 preschool students in that classroom. So we have always done that. You know, as opposed to 20 students with only 5 children with disabilities, we've always maximized the numbers of students with special needs that we can have. So the way we are progressing, we are going to pass those numbers from the state. So later in the spring, I anticipate some waivers, and next year we will not be able to accommodate the numbers that are coming our way. So when we ask for the additional preschool staffing, we haven't talked about preschool at school committee in quite some time. A few years ago, we went through a program evaluation, and we revised and updated how we service our preschool students. In the past, I was always coming when students joined, we need another paraprofessional, we need XYZ. Where preschool can almost double in size because it's a rolling admission as children turn 3, our program is built now to staff children throughout the year. So that is, we staff by classroom, so it hasn't had to be per student when student move in asking for support. The classrooms are staffed, an intensive teacher, so many paraprofessionals, so that we can accommodate the students as they move in, which is what happens with preschool. It's rolling as children turn 3. They're aging out of, it sounds sad, they're aging out of something at almost 3, but yet they are, and then they might be joining us. So just the trends have been significant so far this year in terms of the number of evaluations and qualifying students.
I think that explanation helps a lot. And I'm assuming, I think I know that you have a wait list for the typical learners
Yes.
who are eager to get into our preschool. So opening up a classroom would also open additional slots.
So we, in the application just opened this past week, if anybody's interested in becoming a typical community peer, and already there are applicants for the lottery that will be held in February. So it is a sought-after program, and we have never had such a wait list as we have now. So I think that speaks to the number of young children in this community, where in years past, we couldn't fill all the community slots. We were actively trying to recruit families to attend our preschool. Now we have wait lists for both the 3-year-old program and the 4-year-old program.
My last question, is there space for another
Well,
classroom?
look at, if we could be creative at Center School, we can make it work.
Okay, good.
For a year, because there's an addition coming.
There
This
is.
is not a long-term solution, but for 1 year, can we make it work with some creative shifts? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow up on that classroom question? So it's a classroom that has a sink and a toilet for the kids that you're putting them in?
Close proximity, better than it was when preschool was at Elmwood, when they had to go down the hall
All
and
right,
around a
fair
corner.
enough. Fair enough. I'll take that. I have some more questions, if that's okay. Thank you so much for the budget report. Can you tell us, or just remind us, how many out-of-district students we have right now? And does that include the 5 new move-ins?
Yes, so we have 25 right now, and it does include the 5 students. Yeah, and we have 4 of those that are in residential placements. So total of 25 students currently in the program.
Because if I remember correctly, last year we had 30 out-of-district
Mm-hmm.
placements. So this is a kind of return to,
Right, so students come, students go. I mean, we've had students move out, and then we've had students move in. We've actually had students come back and then go back out. But again, with the student move-ins, it's really tricky because the regulation, the way that it works is if a student moves in after April 1st and they're in a private placement, the district they came from, they're owned by that district. But if it's prior to that, they come to us and we own them. If, however, it's a collaborative placement, we own them regardless. And outside of just the move-ins, the 25 placements are not just student move-ins. The 25 placements are also students in district who, unfortunately, the mental health and medical system is glutted. And the problem with that is when students are dysregulated, especially for the social emotional needs, which is what we're seeing right now with our students going out, and there's no placement for them. I mean, we've had kids, unfortunately, waiting in hallways of emergency rooms where medical physicians and providers are calling the district saying, we have no place for this student, and we can't safely bring them back to the district to be educated, so we have a responsibility to educate. And that's where we end up making team decisions for small therapeutic placements with providers. When we go to those team meetings, we're often on calls with DDS, the Department of Mental Health, attorneys, hospital providers. I've been in several of those meetings this past year, and even this past week, quite frankly. And it's unfortunate and it's discouraging about what's going on out there with the medical and mental health system, but we have a duty to educate. And if we can't educate them because the students aren't regulated in the medical and mental health system, we have to put them in a therapeutic environment. And it looks different because it's smaller. It's students who are emotionally fragile and not walking into a big building where they have to navigate peer pressure and supports and all the academic pressures. So that's part of what we're seeing here too. So I want to be transparent. It's not just the move-ins. We're dealing on a day-to-day basis with the students in district following the pandemic with great needs. And it's just really worrisome. And, we're doing a good job. The kids and families are working with me. They're contacting me. They've been wonderful. The families have been wonderful about, signing releases for their providers so I can talk to psychiatry and medical professionals to make sure we're doing, everything that we need to do. And we will continue to do so. But that is why, I'm making these projections based on who I know currently we're working on in team meetings that might most likely need a placement, who has moved in, who's not aging out yet, and then anticipated needs. I always budget for a couple of anticipated, but I have to tell you, with the growth that we're experiencing, having 5 move-ins like that, I would never expect that in a non-pandemic year to look like that. But it's just, I do attribute it to pandemic and the medical and mental health system not having enough service delivery. That's what I think is happening.
And
I'm
still
You-
pulling.
yep, no, I just wanted to ask something on that specifically, so go ahead if you want.
Thank you. No, I wanted to thank you because I know this past year in particular has been tremendously challenging.
It
And I know
has.
you pay close attention to the students'
Oh,
mental
absolutely.
health. I wonder if some of our constraints aren't perforce physical. We just don't have the room to add another classroom in any of our schools to dysregulated students. So we have to send them out of district.
Well, I would say, I mean, we have our, the way that we're dealing with programmatically mental health service delivery is we have our, tier 3 supports, which tier 3, tier 1 you consider like counseling staff. Tier 2 might be, counseling staff and maybe some groups during the week if they need it. But tier 3 is the programmatic supports. And so what's happening is in the buildings, and you've heard me talk about this before, we have our START therapeutic programs and our Empower programs. So those are the tier 3 programs that I've built in partnership with principals and with the BRIGHT network, which is the Brookline Resilient Youth and Transition Program. So among those programs that we've built, we have classrooms for the students to come to regulate. But the dilemma becomes, we promote inclusive practice. We're not sub-separate, and we wouldn't really promote that. We don't want our students in one room all day because their mental health is so fragile. That's just not good. It's not good for them or anybody. So what we do is these tier 3 programs promote inclusivity, which is why I've asked for paras, so we can continue to have kids go out to their classes and get what they need and then come back for support, to have assistance to calm down if they need it. But when a student is that psychiatrically, let's say, fragile, emotionally fragile, and they can't regulate, then we have to have a different place to put them. So in that case, Dr. Tyler, it wouldn't necessarily be a space issue. It's a service delivery issue. That really is what it is. And unless Hopkinton Public Schools built a, K-12 alternative program, let's say, downtown, and we've divided it by grades, then we wouldn't send kids out. We could build a program within, almost like a school within a school. It'd be a program within the district, but we don't have that. I mean, bigger cities have that. Worcester Public has that. Boston Public has that. But we don't have that. So that's really what it comes down to. It's less about classroom space and more about the type of service delivery we would offer, and then philosophically what we're offering as a district. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to go back to the kids that we have waiting in emergency rooms, like that is actually my line of work, and I do see that the wait times in emergency rooms is significantly longer. The ability to place kids any place that need a safe, contained space is much more difficult. They can spend weeks, months, even in the emergency room, which is not good for anybody.
Yep.
Are you seeing a couple things? One is in your numbers here, is that also including acute residential placements that would not be year-long placements, but kids who need something that maybe would not be covered at 100% by their insurance? That the district picked up some of that cost as well, and is that absorbed into your budget?
Yes, and I'm glad that you asked that question, because just to help folks understand how it works. So when we go to a meeting, a team meeting, only decisions about placement can be made at team meetings. So when I get called to hospital clinical meetings, which I do, we don't make team decisions. But at those hospital clinical meetings, Department of Mental Health and Department of Children and Families have the capacity to residentially place students. However, DDS, which services our autism population, other populations, does not have that capacity. So if you have a student who's dually diagnosed with autism and social emotional issues, DMH will not pick them up because DDS has picked them up, and DDS does not have the capacity to place them. This is what we're running into. So it's really tricky, because when you have students, which we do, have students with that profile that are out, the burden of the responsibility is on us. So in the only circumstance which a hospital or an organization would place them is if they fall under the DMH category or DCF category. But truth be told, even when they fall under those categories, they will push back on the schools, because if the student is dysregulated and needs to be educated, they have processes to go through too, which is incredibly time consuming. And they don't have funding, to be quite honest. They don't. I have sat at so many meetings where I'm a straightforward kind of person. I'm a straight shooter. And I've sat at meetings with physicians and psychiatrists and said, look, I know you don't have a bed and you don't have funding. You got to tell me, is this a real need in terms of the school district? And can you service the educational component while the child's in the hospital? Because if not, we've got to talk. I mean, that's how we're dealing with this. And everybody's being honest with us because we know the state of what's going on. Everybody does. So in the long answer to your question is, right now, all the students that I have placed, the school district has owned the burden of the responsibility, unless it's a settlement agreement, which parents and I might have agreed on something if they wanted a different placement or something that was a little more costly or more beneficial, and they decided they wanted something different. And so we could do that if we go outside of, I don't want to get into this big whole debate, but about Chapter 766 approved schools, right? So there's another policy. But we own the responsibility right now. Those kids that we're placing, we own the responsibility because those other program providers have not been able to step up to the table, particularly DDS, and say, yes, we'll pay the residential component and you pay the educational component. In previous times, pre-COVID times, when there was a little more flexibility and a little less heightened state of society, we were able to work, better with DMH to say, why don't you pick up the residential portion and we'll pick up the day portion. But we're seeing dual diagnosis profiles, and there's just no funding there in DDS to do that.
Thank you. I apologize, I did not get that to you, and it asked that I was going to be looking for that in advance.
No, Nancy.
But the next question sparked it in my
Nancy,
head.
I'm a licensed therapist. I
Yeah, I
love
know.
that stuff. That's probably the easiest question tonight.
I've got
So-
another one that kind of follows that, and then I will get out of the weeds a little bit.
Sure.
I know we also have students that are waiting for, day type program, partial hospital programs, and the wait list to get into those is very long, and I know those students are then still in school because even though they need more therapeutic support, it's hard to find them in a timely manner.
Mhm.
Are you seeing more of those kids waiting, and are we, able to support them adequately with the existing things we have in place, or are you having to shift things around?
I absolutely have to shift things around. In full transparency, it is absolutely difficult to educate a student who's awaiting a partial hospitalization. So just so folks understand who are listening to this presentation, partial hospitalization means you've been hospitalized, you've been discharged, we've stepped you down. You need to come every single day to a program to continue to receive treatment on an outpatient basis because the beds are full. But there's waiting lists. So because of those waiting lists, they defer them to the school district to wait while they're trying to get into treatment. Well, having worked in a hospital in the past myself, if you've been deemed in need of day treatment, that's where you should be during the day. Not in Hopkinton Public Schools, but because we have nowhere to put them, they come to Hopkinton Public Schools. So what happens is, when that happens, I work with the clinicians and the team chairs, and we put them in the Empower and the START therapeutic programs, because those are the hospital-based transition programs. So our therapists work with them very closely, and so do our, counselors. But I have to tell you, it doesn't go as well as we want it to. It doesn't. In full transparency, I am meeting with psychiatrists and physicians and parents and saying, if we cannot meet your students' needs here because they're so dysregulated, we've got to get a physician's notification for some home hospital tutoring until your child can get into the placement. And so that's what we're up against. So really, really in transparency to the whole committee and to the whole community, I am shifting things around. I'm working with clinicians, providers. I'm trying to do home hospital tutoring if I'm able to. Sometimes we're doing some partial programming where, a therapist might say, okay, well, we'll have them come see me in my office X time during the day, and parents might dismiss children early because the child needs that, because that's the best way to get some treatment during the day. But it's tricky. It's real tricky.
I appreciate all of that and the level of detail.
Mhm.
And I also am aware, just for back to kind of the higher level budget, that your asks are significant in terms of the financial piece, and that $1 million does work out to be about 2% of our budget, but
Mhm.
the need is really highlighted well.
Thank you.
In terms of what's there.
Yeah, and I'd like to say we can hope that there'll be some grant offsets. I mean, last year I was able to do some significant grant offsets to this budget, but it's so early in our budget process, I can't predict. But believe me, any grants that come my way that I can write to offset, please know that I will do that. I will do that.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. First, thank you for everything you do for the special education
Thank you.
program. It's much appreciated by the community, I'm sure. Regarding what you just said about grants, though, too, and as I listened to you talk about we're picking things up because the state agencies aren't able to do this. Is there, just before coming here, I read an article in the Globe about Governor Baker frustrated that we haven't figured out as a state how to allocate the $5 billion in pandemic relief funding. Is there an opportunity to write letters to our representatives to make sure some of that money gets directed to the correct state agencies so that districts aren't left picking up the bill for this? Especially if it's pandemic related in some cases.
If there's an opportunity to do that, and with Dr. Kavanaugh's support, I would love to craft something on behalf. I'll try to take all the money for the whole district. $5 billion, folks, help me write it. I mean, I'm not kidding you. That's a great suggestion, and if we have the opportunity to do that, Dr. Kavanaugh, and I can, receive your support, and maybe with Susan too, business manager, we can maybe calculate what we're dealing with, and write it and craft it carefully to appeal. And maybe we can even get some state rep support too. Like, I know typically when we try to mobilize this, we would try to get state
Yeah, I
rep
would
support.
recommend a meeting.
But that would be like a wonderful opportunity, if we can do that, I absolutely, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Just a follow-up on that. I've always been so impressed with how much a very skeleton crew of administrators is able to accomplish in this district. And you never ask for more. You're not asking for more administrative help, and that worries me. Because I feel like the pressures on the district are so immense right now, and I know you're all perfectionists and you do a fabulous job, but sometimes you have to ask for help because you are not able to meet everybody's needs if the candle is being burnt at both ends. So I hope that you feel like you can come and ask for that too, and not just more paras, even though there's absolutely good reason to have paras, but maybe some more upper level administrators are needed because you just don't have enough time. I mean, we're still in a crisis situation.
I also am aware that we have appropriations representation. I don't know if either of you would like to come up, if you have any questions or comments that you want to, on this.
I don't have questions. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions either.
Okay, great,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming in and for giving your presentation, and thank you to Lauren. It's nice to see you. I know we'll be seeing you in a few
I'll
weeks.
see you soon.
Thank you so
That's
much.
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to Mr. Ghosh. Is that- Do it.
We're gonna let Tim go next.
Welcome. I don't think we've had you here this year.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
I don't think I've seen you
Good
except
evening.
on
It's
Zoom.
good to see everyone. Thanks for having me back. Let me get my presentation up for everybody.
And just for anybody following along at home, it is in our packet, your executive summary and whatnot, for anybody who wants to look at the school committee packet posted on the town calendar.
Let's see if I can get this on the screen. Be an epic fail if I could not use the technology.
Who are you gonna blame for that?
Wouldn't be the
Would make
first
us all
time,
feel
but
better.
it does
It
happen.
makes us feel better.
It looks like it's working. We'll see. All right, there we go. So I've got a high-level overview kind of just of the technology department and the funds, and then I'll kind of go through the breakdown of the executive summary, if that works for everybody. And I just thought I'd start by thanking Linda Henderson, if I could, before I get started. Linda Henderson was our information systems manager for the district and has worked for us for 27 years and recently retired last week. So I just wanted to congratulate her. If people in the community see her, just kind of thank her for her service. She's worked with us for a long time, supporting us over the years, and we will greatly miss her. But we are really happy that she's out and retired and enjoying her life. So just wanted to start with that. So thank you. In terms of the technology budget and the proposal for FY23, let's see here. Sorry. I just thought I'd give you a high overview of kind of what the budget supports. And some of you may have seen this slide in the past, but ideally, the technology budget supports really our centralized data center, which is based at the high school, which is a combination of servers and filters and security appliances that keep our network safe. It really helps support and maintain our VoIP phone systems that are throughout the district. All of our one-to-one environments, which include all of our devices that support our students and teachers with instruction and day-to-day operations. It also will support professional development for our technical staff and our tech integration teachers. Helps manage all of the Wi-Fi networks that we have throughout the district. We're still managing and maintaining a fiber connection to the high school, which provides our internet to all of our buildings and our employees. All of our leases to help maintain our equipment. And then we're very fortunate the budget you'll see is actually now currently supporting our new web content manager, which we're really happy to have. That was put in place this year, and we've hired Heather Abraham to be in that position, and she's started out over the last month and has been great, so we're happy to have her. So those are at a high level some of the items that the district kind of maintains and works on to kind of allow the day-to-day operations of our school system. And then in terms of just equipment goals, to give you an overview, some of the main funds really support our leases, and these are for our staff. So the slides that you're looking at right now kind of shows you the devices that we have at the different buildings. And so our budget is primarily designed to support student devices at the classroom to have a 1-to-1 ratio. It's designed to support projectors so that teachers can project for instructional purposes, and then to provide staff with a computer so that they can do their work. And what you'll see here under staff leases is we try to rotate the leases so we're not paying a lease every year for every building. So they're organized over 3 major leases. We've got an elementary school-based lease, a middle school-based lease, and a high school-based lease, and they're all at different years. So for example, here, the middle school is in year 4, so in FY23, that means there's no lease payment currently for the devices that the middle school teachers are using. The high school will be starting year 2 of their new lease. They just got new devices this year, and then the elementary schools are in year 3. So what that does is it really helps spread our costs over a period of time, and then over the years we haven't had huge spikes in budget changes since we put these leases in place. So that is what that slide talks about. In terms of our initiatives, our priorities as a technology department, still to work with teachers to align curriculum with Massachusetts technology standards, which we kind of do and been working on over the last 2 years. We've really focused on data privacy in the last 2 years, working with a tech collaborative to make sure that any vendor that we work with or any digital account that we have has a data privacy contract in place with us. They've worked hard to kind of create a digital system so that we can vet any new tool that a teacher is interested in using. So that's really improved over the last couple of years. Obviously, the maintenance, which is really talking about some of the systems I just mentioned, making sure they're up and running. And then supporting instructional software. This is software students may need to access curriculum. And then the last part is really maintaining our networks and our security. So that's really what we've been focusing on in the last year. And then obviously post-COVID, we're focusing on just building capacity with certain people retiring, obviously, building our staff capacity, and really getting organized post-COVID. So in terms of the executive summary, in terms of the personnel summary, there are no new FTE asks for the technology department this year. The only ask that I have, which is listed on Form 3, is a $6,000 increase to help cover some overtime funds, basically for our existing technicians or staff if they need to stay for any given event. This typically could be something like graduation where we need someone to help run sound, things like that. Start a school year when we're rushing to get equipment and things like that ready, and we have to have a few people stay late to help wire carts and do things like that. So it's something we've kind of occurred in the last couple of years a little bit, so this is trying to just bring our budget to neutral, if you will. So it's kind of a catch-up amount. So that's the personnel summary currently, so no new asks. In terms of our overall expense summary, just to give you the big picture, my total budget this year is $2,421,000 roughly, which equates to about 1.9% increase, or an increase of roughly $44,000. So not a huge increase, and I'll talk a little bit about where those numbers are coming from. As you'll see here on this slide, our contracted services are basically our district level account, which manages all of our big contracts with our vendors, helps maintain our student information system, and big software accounts that really run across all of the buildings. And this increase, if you look at the $86,000, a chunk of that is just the movement of an expense that we had on the high school account. So for example, we pay for Schoology, which is our learning management system. Because that's should be covering 3 schools, we moved it out of the high school account over to the district account just to kind of square up the account. So that is about a $29,000 chunk of this $86,000 increase. The remaining roughly $50,000 is due to increase in licensure, basically because of new students. So some of it is having to do with growth. So every year, for example, Power School will do an audit in October when state reporting is done and look at our overall numbers and say, okay, well, you've paid for X amount, but you now have this many students. You now owe us this much money for all the students that you have. So that's a small portion of it. We've also increased a few other products post-COVID that some have really transitioned off some grants and are now moved into the expense accounts that we're still needing to have for our staff and students. And then one of those expenses, for example, is a Chrome management system to help maintain all the Chromebooks that we have in district. So it really helps with inventory. It helps kind of if there's a damaged Chromebook, we can kind of sign that Chromebook in and out. We can know who damaged it when. It helps manages the Chromebooks coming in and out of leases so that we know how to ship them, when to ship them back, and to make sure they're accounted for. So some of this increase is help covering that new product. Our technology maintenance account is level funded at $75,000. That hasn't changed. That account basically supports anything that's electrical that Tim doesn't pay for, I pay for. If it breaks, a failed projector screen, a microphone goes out in an auditorium, the amplifier breaks at the middle school auditorium and we need to replace that, this account helps fund those costs. Our audiovisual supplies, broken projector lamps, missing, remote control units, things like that are level funded. There's a small increase of $2,400, but that's mostly because of increases from our suppliers around projectors and cables. So it's a small increase for AV supplies. The next account is Instructional Technology. This is an actual decrease. So this is a total decrease across the 5 buildings, if you will. So it's a negative $74,000 across 5 buildings. And this is the accounts that we pay our leases out of. So one of these is down because our middle school Chromebook lease came off last year, so that there was a decrease there. An old iPad lease came off, so there was a decrease as well. And then there was a slight increase at the high school level because we added a new lease this year for our high school staff. The next line item is instructional software. That is down over the 5 buildings as well, around $5,000. And part of this has to do with that Schoology expense I talked about and the shift from the high school to the district account. Our library accounts, there's 5 library accounts, one for each building, which covers Opals, which is our software that manages checking in out of texts and things that come out of the library. That's been level funded. Our professional development account is level funded as well, which supports the training for all of our technicians and our tech integration staff, as well as teachers as we implement new products throughout the system. And I think that is it for the major expenses across the technology budget. So I'm happy to entertain questions about any of the budget items or anything else that people would like to discuss.
I have a question. First, thank you for everything you do for the technology. We all rely on it every day, school committee as well as of course, students. For the way we do school is so different than when we were in school. It's so much online now, and people take it for granted that it's going to be there and that it works. So thanks for your work on that. I have a question about the voice over IP phones, because in my work environment, a few years ago, I showed up at work when we used to go to the office, and there were no phones at the desks anymore. And we all were like, where's our phones? How are we going to talk to each other? And it took some adjustment, but then we started just using phone calls from our computer. So I'm curious how it works in the schools. Are there phones actually, or?
There are physical
Yeah.
phones, and there is an option to buy a license. Instead of having a handheld set, you could use a computer to make that happen. So
Are there savings opportunities there?
I think there could be. To be honest, we don't spend a lot of money on the phones. I guess that could be something we would consider the next time we had to upgrade the phones per se. So right now, we did a singleton purchase of the phones when we implemented them, 5+ years ago. Haven't really had to replace those handsets yet. We've had to add a few for the new additions in the modular classrooms over the last 2 years. So I think that would be something to consider, maybe as we need to upgrade or replace those units, for sure. I think that could definitely be handy for staff that are moving from place to place. That could definitely be a viable option.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a quick question about student, enrollment growth. So do our licenses such that every new student brings with that student an increase in Power School, and then another Power School license or whatever, or do we have capacity up to a threshold to absorb new students, and then we pay an incremental amount for another chunk? Is it?
It's usually, it depends on the software, but let's use Power School as an example. It's a cost per student, not only for the main SIS, which is the student information, but all the add-on products that we have to go with it. Enrollment, special ed add-ons, analytics, all those are additional licenses. And so there's a little bit of a buffer, right? Well, they'll give you a percentage that you're over for a while, and then once you pass over that percentage, then they'll charge you the additional licenses. And then on top of that, you have to then start adding on any additional instructional license that, a tool that a student may be using as additional costs. And it's usually, they all want to do per person cost now.
So, thank you. So to the extent feasible, have we budgeted for which enrollment numbers are we budgeting for? The Dr. Wagman numbers that, type
We've been
enrollment?
using the Dr. Wagner numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any questions from appropriations?
Not for me.
Nope, I like the numbers I saw.
Me too.
I tried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. You might want to connect. Tim, do you need the screen, or you?
Yeah.
Okay, let me kick myself off here.
Like Tim's numbers even better.
All right, Mr. Person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next year.
Hopefully sooner. Next time for another update. It's been so long.
Ashok's not wrong, we do fight over who's paying for what.
Yeah, I know. Passing each other bills every day.
You win some and you lose some.
Well, it's good to see you too. Nice to have you.
It's nice to see you guys.
Seen you in person, a couple weeks ago, I guess.
Yeah, I was here a couple of weeks ago. It's nice to see the lower half of everybody's face
Yeah,
though.
right.
Yeah.
The last time we met, my beard wasn't this gray.
Is it the budget process that did it?
It may be. Ashok, where is this coming up for me to connect to?
Let's see. I think
I
you
saw
got
it
him.
earlier. Oh,
Yeah,
there it
I
is.
think you just had him full screen. Edit Studio, I think, and it might prompt you for a code. 96.
Ashok's everybody's favorite tech person.
Was this staged?
I need another million.
So, good evening, everybody. I'm glad to hear that the classrooms are working out great for everybody, and I'm sure having that stairwell back has been kind of key.
Definitely.
The less crowded in the hallways. Good. Good. So my budget this year, actually, I think I have good news. Decreased my budget by 2% this year. And how we did that was last year, because of COVID, we couldn't have outside groups use our facilities, so we didn't have money in a building use revolving account. And this year, we were able to put $100,000 back into our budget through that account. So that was, great news, obviously. And we were also able to negotiate some of our contracted services to get better pricing through HVAC contracts. And what we did with that was I took some of that savings and I'm starting a couple other preventative maintenance programs with it. So we found that doing the preventative maintenance for the HVAC, again, we were, I think, a year ahead of a lot of people when COVID hit us because we had started that preventative maintenance program on our units. So we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of keep going in preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance and facilities management has been around for a long time, but very rarely practiced. So some of the things that we want to pick up on that is preventative maintenance for our building management systems. So all of our buildings run on a computerized system. The HVAC systems run on a computerized system that we're able to control essentially the whole unit, all the units, how the schedule when they come on, schedule when they go off. If something's broken in the system, we get to see that, we get alarms on it. So it's really a key tool into making sure we're bringing in the fresh air and that everything's running correctly, plus the energy management that we pick up because we're using our systems correctly. So so that's really our goal, is those, and then it's just some kind of hardware things as well. Security doors. We want to have a company come in and kind of go through all of our outside doors. I haven't told Ashok this yet, but our key fob
paying
system.
for
I'm
it.
looking at a preventative maintenance. He's going to pay for all this. Preventative maintenance on our key fob systems, which will also include cleaning our camera lenses and anything outside the building. So if we do have opportunity or need to look at those things, we have a clearer picture. After a while, they get, dirty and dingy. So those are really kind of the overview of the budget. Our personnel level, we're going to keep level funded this year. I haven't really been able to even fill, I have one more open position left open from last year. I think everybody knows that labor shortages or finding help has been difficult. And what I've noticed is even through our new talent ed system, I get a bunch of applications or resumes, and we call those people, and I don't know if they're using this as a tool to stay on unemployment or what the deal is, but I'm not getting a lot of phone calls back. So we're going to continue on, down that road to fill this last position, and then we really want to assess and see where we are with the staffing levels adjusted to this. So we're not going to increase personnel this year. Kind of as I've explained in the expense summary, bringing the $100,000 in from building use and then negotiating those contracts, we were able to decrease the overall budget by 2%. So we moved some money around in there as well. The one that kind of changes, and this one will change every year, is the extraordinary maintenance. So extraordinary maintenance is anything that's under what a capital cost would be. So $25,000 and below, we would use extraordinary maintenance for, but they're kind of for small, big projects, if that makes sense. So if we want to carpet a couple classrooms, that would be below the capital, but not necessarily in what you would call your standard operating budget. So what I do is I meet with the principals and we talk about building needs that may be a small project every year. And even at Elmwood, where I know we're talking about or invited in with the MSBA to potentially do something with that location, there's still maintenance items that need to kind of continue on as we're doing that. We don't want that building to fall in disarray while we still have our students and staff and stuff in there. So we did put some money for carpeting and for basic boiler upkeep. At the Hopkins School, you know, again, flooring repairs, hot water pumps, and then exhaust fans. So what we're hitting with our exhaust fans, so nobody gets nervous, everything is running, but we're nearing end of life on these things. And so part of that, what we want to do is be able to pull those out and replace them before it's an emergency or we're not pulling any air out of the buildings. The middle school is a big one this year. So the middle school after Elmwood is, I think, our oldest building, or I know is our oldest building. And with that, we're trying to, you know, kind of keep that school up to par and even better. So we're gonna do flooring in the middle school, painting, a new gym partition. So I don't know if anybody's ever been in there, but in the brown gym, there's this old wall that we've taken to manually moving. It was once a motorized wall. Well, as that gets older, it gets harder and harder to pull out, almost to where we can't pull it out anymore physically. So we're getting some quotes on seeing what a good opportunity would be to get a dividing wall or a curtain in its place. Why that's important to the wellness teachers is, you know, we have a couple of gym classes in each period, and they do split up the classes and what they're teaching. So they like to have that divider so kids aren't kind of intermixing or you know, I'm learning this, but I'm paying more attention to that type of thing. And then district-wide, we're just looking at some loop road light repairs, which is kind of ongoing. And then we need a new lawnmower because the one we had last year blew the engine. So the other piece that kind of goes back into care of grounds is from our parking lot revolver, and this has been pretty consistent over the years. We take $15,000 from that, and we put that in our care of grounds account. That would pay for any kind of outside work, grass seed, you know, anything that we would need for plowing and just regular outside maintenance. And that's the budget in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions.
I ever remember seeing a budget come forward that actually shows a decrease.
I was pretty proud of myself. I'm not gonna lie. We have in the last 5 years that Susan and I have been together, we've really tried to rework the facilities budget because we want to make it so we don't have to grow it crazy every year. We want to be able to maintain within that budget, and we think we've put together something that should resemble this going forward. You know, adding personnel will do something to it, obviously, or if something big came up in extraordinary maintenance, that would do something. But for the most part, we think we can stay, you know, within a range on this to not have to have big asks in and year out.
Questions?
Yeah, I want to congratulate you on showing a decrease. I know it's because we got revenue coming in, but still.
Yeah.
And, you know, managing 650,000 square feet of building space, 120 acres, it's a big operation. We're also pleased to see in the capital plan that we're going to look further at energy efficiency in the buildings through solar panels. And I hope the community realizes the importance of these building management systems. Like I remember when you worked with us on Marathon School, the savings that those systems deliver is worth the investment multiple times over.
Oh, I would
And
agree with
so
that 100%.
the maintenance of those systems is very important, so I'm glad to see that in here too.
Yeah, I think what happened, like, and I'll use the high school as an example, we were able to upgrade the building management system through Green Communities grant this past year, which was big because we were essentially running the same building management system that was installed in 2000, never upgrading the software. So you can imagine if you were running, you know, Windows 98 or whatever it is, Joe could probably say it better than me, but you know, you lose a lot of efficiencies that, you know, in that manner, and things start coming offline that you can't get back on. Or if something happens with the program, you can't you're going from 0 to 100 upgrade on it, so it becomes expensive fast. I think by doing preventative maintenance on these things, we're able to kind of see what software updates we need to make or any improvements that we can make through the systems on a yearly basis. Not necessarily that we would need to improve them or jump every level. Ashok would be upset with me if I did that. But to get to a point where we're never far behind.
Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to mention, though, too, that when we did the tour of Elmwood School a few weeks ago with the ESBC 2, it was noted that the librarian thought the furniture should be upgraded, but I don't see that in here. And Leah was on that tour too, and she said, make sure you put that stuff in there. You have to ask or you won't get it. And Elmwood has the lowest ask of all the schools, and I'm glad you said, just because we're looking at MSBA project to address the constraints there, we still need to invest in that building. And to see only a small amount of recarpeting as a request after the tour that we had, I would have expected to see more investment in some improvements there. So that's my only comment on that part of it. Yeah, especially since we're saving, we're coming at 2% under. Maybe there's an opportunity to do a little more.
Yeah, I think as we had talked about some of that library furniture, our thinking is if you are going to create a new Elmwood in 4 years, I mean, we've lived with it for a very, very long time, and so it may be better to purchase that furniture when you're also getting the reimbursement rate.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's smart too. But as thinking from the community's point of view and from the students' point of view, there'll be generations of kids going through, not generations, but time is precious in these kids' lives. So there'll be a few more years of kids coming through Elmwood still, and they'll remember Elmwood for what it is today. They won't have the benefit of the new Elmwood. So I think we have to think of it that way too, serving the current population.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't really know how many years until we have the new Elmwood.
Exactly, or
So
weather, or weather even, really.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we don't even know if it will be a new Elmwood.
But overall, thank you, great job. And
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of the way you're running the operation, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Anything from appropriations on building and grounds?
I think we like when the numbers go down. I'm new, but I'm thinking.
You're picking that part up.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Great.
Great, thank you
Great.
very much.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Back to the top here, and so that was great to get our first 3 presentations, and brings us into the superintendent's report.
Good night. All right, so the superintendent's report for November 18th, 2021. You'll see in part of this presentation, it might have been just a smidge more appropriate if it had come before the directors of presentations, but we can work through that. The contents of tonight's presentation, just a very brief update on the high school mask lifting period. I do have to share with the community that Elmwood has a classroom that's been closed for quarantine. We will share a little bit of information about the budget message, an enrollment update, and then finally, Mrs. Rothmick would like to share some information about the roof projects at the middle school and at Hopkins. All right, so in regard to mask lifting, the only day left in our 3-week trial is tomorrow. And to date, we have 707 students now who have submitted the required paperwork. And that paperwork was proof of vaccination as well as a parental permission document. That constitutes just a little over 19. And according to our public health officials, that student contracted the virus outside of Hopkinton High School, which is school during the mask lifting time. And so I think over time, we did have more and more students removing their masks. However, I think if you go into the high school, Going forward, students and staff are going to resume wearing their masks next Monday, November 22nd, and they will do that for the 3 days before the Thanksgiving holiday, as well as for the week that follows that holiday. So they will be masked at least until Monday, December 6th. So the school committee could, in its December 2nd meeting, include another discussion or action item on mask lifting, and maybe there would be mask lifting again from December 6th, depending on where we are, I think, in the community and in the schools with prevalence of COVID. All right, so I'll tell you a little bit about the Elmwood School classroom closure. Over the past couple of weeks, we've been hearing from head nurse Kathy Bain, as well as from Principal Ann Carver. You know, we've got another COVID positive student, another student in that classroom, oh my gosh, another student in the classroom. And so we have started to see that in a particular classroom, there have been 8 people who are COVID positive in the last week and a half. And so at that point, we felt it prudent to reach out to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I did talk to Jeffrey Riley this morning, who said that it would be his recommendation to close that classroom. One of the things the commissioner said is that if we are closing a classroom, we did need to be able to provide in-person learning through Zoom with our kids. So we will be doing that kind of live via Zoom instruction from 9 to 12. Tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then all of the students would be invited back again on Monday, November 29th. We should be very careful to say that right now there are 9 cases at Elmwood, but 8 of them are in that individual classroom. We have not seen any other in-school transmission outside of that particular classroom. All right, and this is the part that may have been more appropriate before you just saw those 3 presentations. But I think it's very important to talk a little bit tonight about the select board meeting that we attended on September 25th and the budget message that came from our select board. At that time, they projected a 3.25% budget message. They would like us to keep our budget within those parameters. And I think what you saw tonight is an indication that we have been incredibly conservative in our approach to budgeting this year. You know, you can see that in places like in Mr. Person's budget, you can see it in Mr. Ghosh's budget, but there are some places where you know you can't be conservative. And you know, as we are looking at our budgets, you know, Dr. Zaleski clearly has to ask for what she needs to ask for, given the fact that there are no alternatives. And if we take a look at that 3rd bullet down, I just need the community to know that we are still seeing enrollment growth. And I am going to show you a few slides on that topic in a moment. But as we are seeing this enrollment growth, we don't really know where we're going to be when we get to annual town meeting in May. And so while these are the budget presentations that you see now that I think have been very carefully crafted and people have been very sort of prudent in their asks, things could change. So as we went through the process, you saw tonight that we do have increased out-of-district placement costs, and those constitute 2% of an increase over last year, which is really 2% of what the select board has asked us to do in terms of the 3.25%. Thankfully, through the careful use of revolving accounts, we've been able to increase our offsets by over $700,000. You know that in FY22, we did, after the FY22 budget was passed, hire an SEL director. And so that the cost of that position is going to also need to be absorbed into the FY23 budget. And then just so people are aware, many of the positions that we have in the district now, so we've got, say, for example, a 0.6 social worker, there are some paraprofessionals, some tutors designed to get kids back up to grade level in places like reading and math. So those positions are grant funded, so you won't see those in the operating budget for FY23. I will do the enrollment update very quickly, and I know there's Mr. Markey, you did make a comment about this, but I do think it's so important for us to be able to see the rapid climb that we're seeing right now. So on October 21st, we were 75 students above where we were on June 30th.
And then last time we met on November 8th, we had gone from 75 to 81, and tonight 81 has risen to 89. And so you are seeing that slow and incremental rise in our students. It's hard to know if this will at some point plateau, but if it does not, and we continue to see these kinds of growth, I guess, in our student enrollment, we are probably going to need to think hard about whether or not we have asked for the right amount of personnel.
Dr. Kevin, so do you know, and you may not off the top of your head, how many net new students Dr. Wagman predicted for next year? Like we're already at, we're already adding into that, right?
The only thing I can say is if we budgeted for 72, that would have been my guess as to what he had said, because I
For
believe we
this
were
year.
using
This year.
his numbers.
That's
Yeah.
this year. So
Oh,
for
I see, for
next
next
year,
year.
it's-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't do
And
that.
thank you for tying it back to what that means, 'cause that
Yes.
was my only point last meeting is, and you said it tonight, that therefore we may be having to look back to see if we're budgeting the proper amount based on the growth that we're seeing.
Yes.
And space is the other thing, and what are we doing about space, for example? And we saw the high school adding classrooms and moving in, which is
Yes.
great.
It is really exciting.
Yeah.
Is it nice?
Yes, it is.
Do you have any classes in there?
I do. I have my math class in there.
Oh,
It's very
really
nice.
nice.
Yes.
All right, and Mrs. Rothmick will tell you about the Hopkins and the middle school roof projects.
So just to give you an update to continue the world's COVID woes, on February of 2020 is when we received the bids for the Hopkins and the middle school roof project. So during the month of February, it was brought to the school committee with an intent to award. An intent to award letter was submitted to the vendor, Cape Way Roofing. And then, as we know, the May 2020 town meeting was delayed until September, and all capital projects were deferred. So in June 1st of 2020, the intent to award letter for Cape Way was amended, and Cape Way had agreed to hold their bid price for the summer of 21 construction in anticipation of the May 21 town meeting. So May 21 town meeting, we were given the approval authorizing $3 million for the project. This summer and fall, Cape Way was able to finish the sloped roof part of the project. However, at this time, we still have not been able to secure the flat roofing material, and the delivery dates are still unknown. So as you can see, we've gone way past the date of holding the bid for the summer of 2021 that Cape Way had agreed to. So I've been in touch with the Inspector General office at the state and told them our predicament, and they are advising that we rebid the project. Cape Way would not be able to continue to hold those prices, which will now be two-year-old prices. We all know what has happened to the cost of material, and prevailing wage alone increases monthly. So I did call the town and make them aware that this was not something that was presented to the committee. So we have a TBD project that has been added to the school committee capital because I don't know the order of magnitude that we're asking for to increase the cost in order to finish this project now in the summer of '22, hopefully.
Can I ask a question on that? Of the sloped roof portion, what percentage of the 3 million was the sloped part versus the flat part? Do you have any idea? Was it the majority, the minority, like a third?
Maybe a third,
Okay,
small,
so the majority is left to be done.
yes.
Okay.
I have a question on the TBD placeholder. So would we then, since this was authorized in May of '21, do we need to have the entire amount reauthorized by the town, or just the amount, any amount increased over what was authorized in
So
May?
town meeting would authorize the increase.
So,
From a mechanical standpoint,
Yep.
The town probably would take back that borrowing and reborrow. So, but that's the mechanics behind what we would have to do.
Okay.
So we would have to go to town meeting and ask for an increase to that authorization of 3 million.
Makes sense, okay.
Yeah.
So, just so you are aware, and we've made the town partners aware as well. Not having any idea of a delivery date still at this juncture is disappointing. So.
And just wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Any questions from?
Oh, yes. In the superintendent's report, is it okay to ask about that? So we noticed that you had a third bullet there, that the school committee at the December, the second meeting could consider next steps, basically, on the mask off ramping at the high school. Because we did this 3-week trial that's coming to an end. Presumably at that meeting, you'll give us a full report of the experience, or basically you gave it tonight too, that it's gone very well.
Yes, there's
and-
not really much to report.
Okay.
I mean, interestingly, you know.
Great.
No news.
Maybe what would be
Yes.
interesting is the educational impact view. It would be awesome to get some of that at our next meeting.
Yes.
Was there a notable change or even anecdotal feedback from educators that this improved the educational experience? Because I feel like all these discussions we're having about masking is taking us off of our other thing that we're not really qualified for, but we stepped up to do as school committee volunteers, which is education-related discussions. And that's something we haven't talked as much about when we talk about mask off ramping. It's more about us pretending that we're public health experts, which we're not that either. You know? So with that, I would love to see that agenda item. I don't know what others think.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. And then do you have, I know that the 5 to 11 vaccine was made available and a lot of people are taking advantage of that. Do we have any sense yet on what that means for the vaccination rate at the middle school?
Yeah.
And whether we could move along to the middle school at some point?
So we did, the 5 to 11s were vaccinated. I think they had over 1,000 kids come to the middle school on the 11th on Veterans Day.
Hopkinton children, is that what you're saying?
Not exclusively.
Okay.
I mean, because you can go onto the state website and sign up. We could have had children there from Medway or Ashland. But I think that, in terms of advertising, if you live in Hopkinton, you really knew this was happening. So the follow-up date will be Friday, December 3rd for the kids to get their second vaccine. And I think after that, our public health official, Sean McCullough, should be able to give us the percentages for, all of our kids, grades K to 6. I would assume at that point in time, because we have so many 7th and 8th graders that we already know are vaccinated, that the 6th grade would push us up easily over the 80%.
Mm-hmm.
But I can certainly get those numbers
Okay.
for you after the 3rd of December.
Okay.
It would be good too, I think, in just contextualize it to look at kind of district-wide, not just the high school, kind of what did we see or did we not see? And to look at kind of where we are as a town. I expect by then we may be in a very different place than we are now, better, shifted, whatever. It's hard day to day to know, but I think I look forward to the discussion and kind of the lessons learned from this. So.
Yes.
Right.
And anecdotally, we do know that a lot of children were also vaccinated at their pediatrician. So.
Right, and CVS.
Yes. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, then I will just go on to the school committee chair report to say that the payroll warrant 22010 is approved and included in the packet, as well as warrants 22-015, 22-016, and 22-017 also included in your packet. And just to say that we met today earlier as a budget advisory group with the representation from the select board, as well as appropriations and the staff from both the town side and school side. Nothing really new beyond what I think everything that was in that meeting has already been reported out, but just that is progressing along. So.
Were you able to share at that meeting, for example, the 2% from special education?
Yes, in fact, that has been shared repeatedly, so because that was a need that was well known when we started having these the budget a couple weeks ago. So they are aware of that and kind of moving.
Thank you.
And they're looking at, revenue changes in terms of things that might be beneficial for the entire town, and as well as expenses that might not impact the schools directly, but impact the town. So I think it was mid-December, they're hoping to have a better number in terms of expenses and revenue. Anyway, that's all I have. Do people have liaison reports they want to share?
Yes, I attended the last Sustainable Green Committee meeting, and we spent 20 minutes going through the school capital budget proposal, focused on the solar panel piece, of course. And the Green Committee had good questions and feedback that I'd like to be able to bring back to the superintendent and finance director for the schools, so that we can help. They had good suggestions on how to position and promote what they're doing, and clarify some things that they found confusing even as experts. So that's that. Yeah.
Great.
So I chatted with Susan before the meeting, but if it's okay, I'd like to connect the Sustainable Green Committee and myself with Susan to follow up on some of those questions and recommendations. Okay.
Makes sense.
It sounds like most of it's operational connections that you're making. It's not something that's in the school committee. We wouldn't take action on
Yeah,
anything.
no, the way it is really, it's like the Sustainable Green Committee, of course, is very supportive of the idea of having sustainable energy increased at our school buildings. And they could be a great advocate to promote what we're trying to do. But they had some open questions and also suggestions on how we could message it more clearly.
Great.
Yeah,
Feedback's always good.
good.
Do you guys have any?
The only one I have is, so Hop Coalition meets at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have told Don Alcott that I can't make those meetings. So we are discussing, I think they're going to do a survey to see, I'm not the only one who struggles with that,
Yeah.
so if there are alternate times, but if anybody wanted to be an alternate for me, I could let them know. Otherwise, we can sort of limp along until we have a new meeting time.
Does it make sense to have us kind of go back and check in now that we've been doing our liaisons to see kind of where, if there are other issues that people want to kind of trade around?
Sure.
In the meantime, while you're figuring that out?
So new agenda item?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if other people,
sure.
maybe nobody else has any
Yeah.
concerns about theirs, but just to open that up. Okay, then that brings us down into new business. We have some band donations.
These are always lovely
Yes.
agenda items. Okay, so the first one is we are looking for your approval to accept one Bundy flute, one Ludwig snare drum, and a Rodriguez and Sons guitar donation. And these come from Mr. George Robinson for the band and guitar class at the high school.
Great.
Love it. Motion to approve.
Second. Thank you. So motion by Amanda and a second by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
And it is unanimous and passes. So
Great. All right, and the second one is we have the donation of a violin and a cello, and those come from Brian Hicks, and they are being donated to the orchestra program, and if you'll just approve them.
Motion to approve enthusiastically.
second. Okay, motion by Amanda and a second by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that also passes, and that brings us into policy BEDH, which is public participation at school committee meetings. This is a first reading, and I believe also did go out by listserv earlier this week or the end of last week. I'm not sure which. I know I saw it come through. I did not receive any feedback. I don't know if anybody else has heard anything.
Nothing. No, we have not.
So do you want to highlight the?
Sure. I mean, I think the last time this policy was reviewed was June of 2019. And what we've pretty much exclusively done with this policy is we have handed it over to our legal counsel. And so what you see in black text is what used to be our policy, and what you see in green text are the recommendations made by our legal counsel to this particular policy. So adding in, but no deletions of that. from-
No, the very few deletions that you see there are just places
Crossed
where you
out.
see strike through.
That's right. I don't have any questions.
I'm not guessing that the legal additions address, sometimes we hear feedback from the public that the public comments section of our meetings is awkward because they come wanting to engage and they are able to share their opinion, and we respectfully listen, but have been advised, and maybe in the policy, the expectation is set that we don't comment back.
I would agree that it's awkward.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be under the title awkward.
But,
Policy on awkward things we do.
so,
Yes.
yeah, I don't know if there's any leeway we have on that, but, yeah. I understand the risks that speaking out of order can pose.
So I would defer that to somebody who has more open meeting law and legal knowledge than I do by many times. But I know that there is a difference when we post for a, like a public hearing type of a thing where there is more engagement in that way. And I don't know, because when we have a public hearing, we do have back and forth on stuff. It does tend to be more topic specific though.
Yeah, and the topic is on the agenda.
Right,
So
so
There are
I,
different posting requirements too, for
Yes,
those you have to post further
certain
in
number,
advance and
yes.
so forth.
and they have to be published in newspapers and
Yeah.
85 other things that Georgette probably knows that.
You know, actually, the legal additions do clarify it a little. Apparently, there was a line that said, comment is not a time for debate or response to comments by the school committee. And the recent additions, if that's what green is, explains
That's exactly
why
what
that
it
is.
Yeah,
Which I
right.
do think is helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. So I take back my comment that
It-
it does actually help clarify.
It's still awkward.
Yeah.
It is still
Doesn't
awkward,
solve it.
and maybe it would be helpful if we routinely had physical copies of the policy for people to look at, so that because it's hard to go through the whole thing in the couple minutes we have. But just because I feel awkward, not, because I often do wish that there was more that I could say, and I'm sure everybody else does too. But I value people that are willing to come here physically to the meeting and not just kind of tell us, but tell the community what the concern is.
Yeah, I mean, another acknowledgement, though, is that as public comment comes to us, we do have the opportunity to create a future agenda topic that we can all
That's
be
true.
duly prepared
That
for.
is-
Yes,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
that was an addition legal made. The
Yeah.
chair may at their discretion place an item that requires further deliberation on the agenda for a future meeting. So that's something worth bringing up at the end of the meeting
Yeah.
if we want to take that
Yep.
public comment concern and return to it. Because I too value, so
Yeah.
much value public
Right.
interaction.
I think that's a great
All right.
piece to add. And again, always amazed at the amount of work that you guys are doing in policy, bringing stuff forward, so, thank you.
It appears piecemeal on the
But
agenda.
I will, and sometimes we don't have time to
Yeah.
get through all of it, but I know that a lot goes into it, and that you meet at just an hour that I might not be quite as functional. So, this is just a first reading, so we're not looking to pass it anyway. I don't know, Jesse, if there's anything you want to think about from the student perspective, because we certainly would welcome students that wanted to make public comments too.
All right.
Yes, I would also like to know if you're interested in working on how did education change, if at all, with the
Yes,
removal of the mask?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One
I
of
would
your
love that.
spectacular surveys.
Right, for sure.
Yes. And for those who did not hear the NPR, you were very articulate and did a nice job with that, with the interview on the masking, or unmasking in this case. All right, so that, I I've changed pages on my computer, I apologize. Brings us down to, there is no old business here. Are there future agenda items that people would like to add on here? Go ahead.
I have one. I would like to, I know we have a lot of meetings, so I hate to even say this, but I would like to talk about office hours and
Great.
re-engaging,
Yeah.
either targeted
Yeah.
office hours, more like our listening tour, or open office hours, because I do think that is a really good opportunity for the public to talk and share concerns with not a quorum, but two of us or one of us.
Yeah.
So.
Do we want to, you want to bring that back to discuss here? Because we can, because that would be, scheduling would be an exemption to open meeting law. We could coordinate a date outside of the meeting ahead of time too. Either. I
Either
don't know
way,
what-
I'm
Okay.
open.
And do you have a preference for office hours or listening hours? It sounds like you prefer office hours.
I think both are useful. Like, yes, I think we know some areas of concern for the community, but then there are things we don't know. So I think an open, I think both are useful. I love the listening tour, and we had really good participation, I thought.
It's fantastic.
We don't always get huge participation at office hours, but
We did for the listening tour.
we did for listening tour. So we'd have to come up with a list of topics or populations or something to frame the listening tour. But
So
either something where we
yeah.
can engage. And it seemed like Zoom worked well for it. I mean, I'd be
Worked
willing
very
to meet in
well.
person, but Zoom is convenient for childcare. And
Yes, so
Scheduling.
why don't we put that actually on the agenda then to figure out what we want to do topic-wise versus open
That would be great.
versus what.
And maybe we
Next
can,
time.
if the community watching has thoughts about office
Yeah, it would
hours
be great to
versus
have-
listening tour or topics, or Zoom versus in person. If you shoot us an email, that would be good input.
Excellent. So that brings us to items by consensus.
Okay, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Meg and a second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that also passes, and that brings us down to adjournment.
Yes, it's my job.
I
It's
apologize, I
time
do-
for this to end.
So a motion by Meg,
Yes.
Second.
second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned at 8:40. Our next regular meeting is going to be on December 2nd, 2021, with budget presentations, and then again on December 9th. So thank you all for coming or watching us, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
All right.
Thank you.
And then again on the